Good afternoon. This is Rich Ventura, Vice President of B2B for North America. Welcome you to our second RV on AV. This week's topic will be covering education and CARES Act, and I've got an amazing panel here. So let's bring them up. First, I'll introduce Julie Solomon, Chief Marketing Officer at CCS. Good afternoon, Julie. Or good morning, probably for you still.
Yeah, good morning still, yeah.
I've got Tim O'Neill, Director for IT for Client Services at Brandeis University. How are you doing, Tim?
Doing great. Good afternoon or morning, everyone.
Cool. James McGooke, Manager of Collaboration Technology at the University of Indiana. How are you doing, James?
I'm doing just fine. Glad to be here today. Thanks for having me.
Always great to have you. And Tina Hayek, Senior Account Manager for National Accounts at Sony B2B.
Good morning from the West Coast. I'm doing well, thank you.
Excellent. So, want to talk a little bit about the goal of today's panel. We're going to talk about some trends and what we're seeing in the education space. We're going to talk about CARES Act. I know a lot of people are asking a lot of questions. I still ask my team every day, you know, how do we attack CARES Act funding and what does it mean for us? And we'll talk a bit about the impact of schools. We're going to talk a bit about really what the return to the classroom is starting to look like and what how schools are measuring the effectiveness, what technologies you're deploying, and really have a good conversation around the Hyflex classroom as well as the hybrid classroom. So be interested to kind of learn more about how you're deploying those solutions. And I think more importantly, it's really just understanding the what's impacting education today, what things you are seeing, and so I hope for a really good discussion around this. And definitely, as we go, I ask the audience to please submit any questions that you have. We will definitely be addressing and going over them throughout this. One other thing, just as a reminder, we are doing these monthly, and if you've got ideas on themes that you'd like to see us cover, I'll share towards the end what next month's theme will be. But please don't hesitate to ask. We're always listening to all of you. So maybe I'm going to start with probably the big question of the day, and that's CARES Act, and what is CARES Act, and how schools are using it, and how it's different. And Julie, I'm going to start with you. I think you're our resident CARES Act expert. Explain a little bit about CARES Act and what this really means, not just for higher education, but even K-12, because there's a different impact for them.
Sure. So for our purposes, there are two main funds to talk about, totaling over $280 billion. There's the ESSER Fund, which is Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund, that received $211 billion, and HERF, which is the Higher Education Emergency Relief Fund, which is $76 billion. And they came out in 3 rounds. The first round is the CARES Act, which everybody is sort of synonymous with all of this emergency relief funds, that came out in March of last year, and it was $30 billion, which at the time seemed like an enormous amount of money. Then in December of last year, CARESA arrived. That was $82 billion. So now we've tripled our investment in education, and thought we were done until March last month, when the American Rescue Plan arrived, and that was $168 billion. So doubling what the round that the CARESA funds were. So a lot of money available. And the main difference in the provisions for higher education versus elementary is in student financial aid. In the first round, public institutions needed to set aside 50% of the money for emergency financial aid grants to in-person students. Remember, all these students now who lived on campus were stuck on campus. So they were paying for tuition, food, housing. The other 50%, called the institutional portion, is where technology funds come in. And in the second and third rounds, public institutions needed to spend at least what they spent on their financial aid for students again, but for-profit institutions had to use 100% of the money for student grants. So still a lot of funds available out there.
Okay. You know, out of curiosity, how are schools identifying and I'll ask all of you on this, but Julie, maybe start with this. How are schools identifying where in technology to spend those funds?
Well, I think it depends on where they were in the process. In the first round, when we first received money, everybody was just responding. So anything that would help with remote learning, webcams, student devices, connectivity, just to get them going, to be able to talk to students and teachers connecting. In the second round, now they had a lot more money to spend. So now they're talking about stabilizing. The buzzwords were strategic, sustainable investments, better preparing for students to have a positive experience however they connected, and being ready for anything if it happened again, if they needed to close again. So they were looking at large format displays, better camera systems, better audio. But now with this new American Rescue Plan funding, it's all about investing over the long term. Learning loss is a big concern, social, emotional, and academic needs of the students. So now they have a chance to rethink the way that classrooms are set up and lessons are taught and captured. That's where Hyflex comes in, multiple displays, tracking cameras, microphone arrays, loudspeakers. And they've got quite a bit of time to figure out what they want and to expend those funds.
Okay. So Tim, let's talk a little bit about what you guys have done over at Brandeis. I mean, I know we talked a little bit about it when last week we were going through things. Tell me a bit about how this investment's been impacting the classrooms for you.
It's allowed us to increase our expenditures. So I know that this industry's taken a hit, and especially our associates in the rental and staging side. But on the integrator side, there's a lot of business there. Our investment is almost doubled what we normally put into classroom refresh in the past year. Obviously, spent on different things because our typical refresh cycle has been paused in a number of rooms, but the rooms that were upgraded to handle Hyflex hybrid education, a lot of investment had to go into touchless microphones, cameras, tracking cameras, PTZ cameras, and then DSP processing and integrating all that into computing devices so that signals could be routed to many locations simultaneously. So that's what's been happening at Brandeis.
Okay. James, how about at the University of Indiana?
Yeah, I would say very similar to Brandeis. We had already started down the road of supporting audio and video in our classrooms with lecture capture many years ago. So we had a bit of a head start, but with the pandemic, we had a rush to support those remote learners, to adapt our spaces that had already been designed for active learning to other modalities, whether it's Hyflex or that larger umbrella that we consider hybrid. So it's been a shift in the way we think about all of our spaces and the tools that are available and how they get used.
Okay. So we keep hearing this term about Hyflex. Tim, since you brought it up as well, how do you guys define what Hyflex rooms are? What does a Hyflex room mean to you?
Well, Hyflex is really a modality. It means the students all have the choice to learn synchronously, asynchronously, in person, or remotely, and they're not forced to do either or. So I think that's a slight variance that we put on Hyflex as opposed to hybrid, which means hybrid maybe everybody is expected to take part in a certain percentage of time online, a certain percentage in person. It's sort of a modality difference. But as far as a technical approach, we treat the rooms the same. The rooms need the same solution. They need automated recording. They need connectivity to an online learning program, and they need an ability to work in person, for the faculty to work in person as well as remotely with their students simultaneously.
So Julie, being CCS is an integrator and a great partner of all of ours here, how do you guys sit down and really help a school identify? We look at a Hyflex room and a hybrid room, these types of things. How are you guys sitting down with the school to help them define what that means?
So all of our sales reps are very consultative. They've been briefed on available funds. They're actively working with their customers to discuss long-range plans, how technology fits into the overall picture. Some schools didn't know that they can be reimbursed with current funding round allocations for purchases all the way back to March 13th of 2020, when the president first declared the national emergency. Or that the American Rescue Plan funds ESSER 3 don't need to be expended before September 30th of 2024. So that's the way that we're working with our customers to make sure they're educated on what the rules and regulations of the acts and what they have available, and then what's the best solution for them.
Okay. So Tina, when we're looking at this, what role does a manufacturer, how are we playing, or how does a manufacturer play in all of this in helping the schools and the integrator?
It's a great question. So the role of the manufacturer is to really work in partnership with the integrator. So to listen and to understand the needs of the school, budgets, any technology requirements they have, and helping identify cost-effective technology solutions that qualify for the CARES Act funding. Having some general knowledge of funding available, who's eligible and how to secure it is helpful. Listening this morning, I'll probably just reach out to Julie to lean on her expertise on funding and all things CARES Act.
Okay, all right, thanks. So James and Tim, one of the things I'm kind of curious about, because you had to change the classrooms, or I know James, you said you guys were starting down that route at the beginning of this. What technologies are you leaning on specifically for your classrooms? Maybe I'll start with you, James. What are some of those technologies that you're leaning on that's helping with these Hyflex classrooms?
Sure. Like I said, we'd already started using audio and video in our classrooms. So we've had some cameras. Sometimes it's just a basic webcam. Other times they're tracking PTZs or, other advanced camera systems. But what we find is that there's more interaction and more collaboration that needs to happen between those in-person students and those that are remote. And this becomes a real challenge for us, particularly in terms of audio. So, we're looking at more advanced microphone systems that are out there that allow those students in the classroom to have a normal conversation with the students that are at home. So that's one area where, we're continuing to look at new products and advance the state of technology in our classrooms. The other is things like support of whiteboarding. How do you work on a whiteboard with students that are in the classroom and those that are remote? So any kind of tool that we can use to make that work better, to improve the experience the students have in the classroom or remote is something we're looking at. Recently, we installed a Sony Edge Analytics appliance in one of our lecture halls. And, this is a way to try and bring in that engagement into a space that had originally been designed for in-person lectures. So I think some of the technologies are out there and they're really coming along, and we can bring those students in and make sure that they're engaged.
Cool. No, it's great to hear that you're using different types of technologies instead of just relying on one. So Tim, I mean, what anything different or anything that you're using out at Brandeis?
It's very similar. I think our operation is a little smaller than James's, but we were on the same path. We had lecture capture and we had remote learning happening. The scale increased greatly. We needed to add cameras to rooms, and I think in most of our rooms we go with dual cameras. We do a PTZ or a tracker in the back of the room, and we do a front camera, typically a webcam, and throwing that in there. Now we have to train our faculty on switching between which one they want. Sometimes that's touch panel controlled. Sometimes that's just simply, Zoom controlled. But that's a big part of what we've done in the classroom. And wireless, touchless is the term, microphones. So a lot of beamforming microphones in our classrooms. And the largest ones, the amphitheaters or lecture halls where where the university wants to put students because they can fit more in a room given the confinements and the limitations. Those are the toughest rooms to get those microphones to work. So we've had success, and it's almost iterative. You learn as you go in some of those cases, and a number of the products that come out are new. A lot of cooperation from manufacturers and integrators. So that's it.
So Tim, your background brought a question to the table. Everybody wants to know what's sitting on top of your turntable. If that was a Yes LP cover or not.
And the answer is yes.
It's always fun when we get some of those fun questions during this. So that's
you can see that is pretty old stuff. But yeah, I was happy to get it out over the holiday break and start playing them again.
Good. I think a lot of us got to do a lot of things over this COVID break over the last year, things that we used to do and we've gotten to do again, which is, it's always great to see when people get to enjoy something, right? I know one question just real quick that was asked was whether these sessions are recorded. They are recorded and they are found in the Pro Sony /AV Solutions page. So definitely go out there if you want to get a lot of information. So maybe turn the conversation a little bit, and let's talk a little bit about how your roles have changed. And I think all of us, our jobs have changed quite a bit during this last year, some more than others. And, let's start maybe at the manufacturer level. Tina, what have you seen as the manufacturer role? How has it changed during this period of time?
That's a really good question. I mean, I think COVID has really underscored the importance and need for providing easy to use, reliable technology solutions for the classroom. Technology that faculty and staff can easily adopt and use without hesitation. Just listening to James and Tim describe their classroom setups, and how some schools had started the transition to more Hyflex classrooms earlier, and COVID has really just forced the issue. So as the manufacturer, we have to come up with technology solutions that allow for that instructional creativity and innovation in the classroom. Technology that provides that seamless way for students, faculty, and staff to interact, connect, and collaborate, whether they are face-to-face in the classroom or online. So we will continue to innovate our products and solutions to meet the needs of our education customers.
Okay, thanks. So Julie, first off, I love the wealth of knowledge you have on CARES Act. It sounds like it's probably a big chunk of your day-to-day every day. And I know someone asked about where to get some good information out there, and it sounds like on your website, you've got a link that's got a lot of good information. What was that URL again?
So it's ccsprojects.com/blog.
Okay,
and we just posted it this morning. Bunch of useful information from the Department of Education, some great summaries of the funding and all the funds involved, how much, who got what, all of that.
Okay, great. So tell me a bit about how you think, or how as an integrator you've really had to evolve or pivot during this period of COVID.
Sure. So technology integrators like us were all of a sudden defined as essential businesses when the shutdown occurred. So we were the link between teachers and students, and suddenly all the technology that was nice to have became need to have overnight. So we got everyone through that, and now we're looked on as the trusted partner that got them through this horrible time. And now they look to us to help them to prepare for the future of their classrooms. Now we've got a little more time, a little more breathing room to really work with them to figure out what they want their rooms to look like in the future. And this whole idea of a set classroom where students are in person and that's the only choice is gone away. So I think what all of this pandemic has shown us is it's jump-started this idea of, unified communication and the ability to learn remotely in an interesting and positive way that is not just kids, little faces on a Zoom screen on the teacher's laptop on their desk, and everybody else that is there is having a great experience. So that's the difference, and that's what we're working with all of our customers to try to get them to that point.
So James, thinking about, you guys were lucky. You started out early with a lot of the technology. I mean, how much has your job changed from? I mean, I'm assuming it's changed quite a bit. How much has your role changed within the university?
Yeah, my role in particular has changed quite a bit. We had started with a small number of courses of faculty really that were online. We had some other faculty that were doing active learning in classrooms through our Mosaic initiative, and so we had we had pockets across the university that were doing all of these things. But suddenly we had to scale this up, and every class had to support remote learning and active learning concepts for remote students. And so this was a challenge to do this quickly. And sometimes it worked well last spring, and sometimes not so well. So I think where we're at now is figuring out what worked. What worked well and what worked for the faculty, how those students stayed engaged, and not losing that, and thinking about our return to in-person learning this fall, which is our plan, and how to keep those lessons learned and continue that engagement. And just thinking about how things were back in 2019 and some of the traditional teaching models, I can't imagine going back. I think we're all different. We've changed dramatically. So we just want to keep that momentum rolling and take those tools, that engagement that the students have had, and keep it in the classroom, especially those traditional classrooms.
So how do you think, thinking about what the fall is going to look like for you and going back, I mean, what does return to the classroom look like to you? You kind of said we're not going to go back, right? We're going to kind of continue this. What do you see it looking like?
I think there are some classes that, the plan may be to return to the way it was previously. I hope those are very few and far between. But now our classrooms are going to support these tools. Our students, our faculty are all experienced with, all of the features that are in our LMS, and with our video conferencing, with our, video management solution. All of these things now are ingrained. Students are used to submitting their assignments as videos. Are they gonna? I just don't think they're gonna go back to the way they were before. So our spaces have to support that. And it's going to be tech heavy, I think. We've through our active learning initiatives, we've looked at these classrooms, and sometimes they're tech heavy, and sometimes they're really simple. In terms of, we need movable furniture that's reconfigurable, and we need whiteboards. But I think moving forward, we have to have that tech, and whatever that means in terms of students being able to share their laptops in those classrooms, or share whiteboards, being able to collaborate online during, before, and after class. We have to think about it holistically, so that all of those tools work in and outside of the classroom.
So Tim, I mean, going back to my earlier question as James, I mean, how has your role changed due to the pandemic and the changes you've done at the university?
I think not just my role, but my whole team is we were a trusted partner at the university, and that was put to a challenge and put to a test more so than it had ever been before. And that trusted partnership had to expand to start becoming responsible for student successes and faculty successes as much as just being responsible for providing a technological solution or providing training and how to get the job done. And now we focus on the outcome and the solution, and I believe we're much closer with the faculty, and we are closer with the student support services group, and I think that was a big change for us, and for groups such as mine, to embed you more. There's centers for teaching and learning. There's advanced departments that help faculty on campuses, and our group had a decent relationship with them. But now we're totally embedded in how we train the faculty. No matter how hard you try to automate the process, we entered a high touch service situation where everybody needed support, and you can't support hundreds of classes kicking off at the same time physically, but we really tried to. So our goal was to provide high touch support for as long as possible and make sure the faculty had support, and therefore the students had support and good outcomes from the technology we put in the room.
So how do you see much of a change for you going into the fall from where you're at now? Do you see, and what's the fall going to look like at your university?
Well, I'm pretty sure we plan to return to full on-premise occupancy. We've been asked to scope out spaces, non-traditional spaces, to have large, lecture hall type gatherings. I think so. There's still a little concern in how the attendance levels are set in all the classrooms. So if we have lecture halls for a couple of 100 to 300, I'm not sure we're going to fill them yet. I think there'll be a distance factor put in there. It won't be 6 feet. Probably 3 is what people are talking about. So because of that, we're looking at theaters. We're looking at other open spaces and seeing if we can retrofit them to support large lecture gatherings. That and then turning over the dormant rooms. There's a number of smaller spaces that have been dormant for 2 semesters, and bringing them up to speed with some type of an online remote hybrid solution, as well as all the rooms we've already got going. So I don't think the pressure's off, and I don't think it'll be any easier this summer getting ready for fall.
Yeah, I definitely, I'm not jealous of your fall. I look forward to seeing the success, though. So Julie, one of the questions that was asked was with CARES Act resources, and that was around training and changing the workflow for instructors. Are there funds out there that are helping support schools for that?
There are. They can actually use their emergency relief funds for that. Really, they can use it for anything that would help in this situation. They're talking about the ability to retrofit or redo your HVAC systems in schools. Even buses are being approved because of all of the summer programs that they feel that are going to be needed for all of this learning loss that has to be caught up. So I would say if schools can create a good case for whatever they think they need, then chances are that's going to be approved. And there's great resources out there for everything related to the funds, for teacher instruction. We have our own full-time training staff here that works with any kind of educational technology that we provide. So lots of resources available.
Okay. So James, one of the things that I look at is, and for both James and Tim, you have this great opportunity and great challenge, and that is teaching teachers how to use the technology and how to really adapt to it and utilize their advantage. Can you guys give some examples of ways that you're doing that? Maybe I'll start with you, James. Some examples maybe that you're doing at the university to help speed up the process or teaching the teachers how to use the technology.
Sure. Well, early on in the pandemic, we launched a website called keepteaching.iu.edu. That was a jump start, and we knew that at the time. But since then, I think we have been more hands-on, and our teaching and learning centers have worked closely with faculty. For those of us on the technology side, I think Tim mentioned it too. It's been very high touch for us to work closely with those faculty and engage with them. Some of these classrooms are, like I said, tech heavy. Some of them are a little bit complicated. We're doing everything we can to simplify. I think in the future those spaces have to work easily and smoothly if we expect the technologies to be used. But I think generally speaking, it's been pretty high touch. But you know, the good news is we have so many faculty that are really interested in doing things. It's not been difficult to get people engaged and wanting to learn more about what's available. So I'm excited actually, and it's a lot of work for everybody, and we understand that, and it can be challenging at times, but it's exciting too. You know, you see this change, and we've seen it coming over the last few years very slowly, but with the pandemic accelerated it. So if anything good comes of this, I think it will be some changes in how we learn and teach in our classrooms in the future.
Cool. So Tim, how are you handling teaching your teachers how to teach again? Because it really is teaching them how to teach all over again.
Yeah, it is. Initially, we were hoping documentation and some recordings and posting them online were going to support us, and then we'd get out there and provide the high touch service. But it turned out we really need to, in the most extreme cases, actually get into classes with the faculty and the students, and of course we have to request to be able to do that. We have to request if we can record their class. If they had not asked for that, we have to worry about, is everybody okay as a student to be recorded? But whether we join it live or whether we record it and talk about it later, we go over the entire situation. And some faculty, you can hear them fine, but maybe they say the students at home can't hear the students in the room, and we want them to have conversations. We'll join the room physically. We'll send someone to sit in there as long as there's a room left to comply with the distancing, and we'll also send staff onto the Zoom call, and we'll see who we can hear and who we can't hear. And sometimes it's just a matter of, if there are 20 students in the class, one of them does not want to speak loudly and they have a mask on, and sometimes you have to say, everybody's doing something, you're just going to have to speak up, or we'll move that person and get them as close to a microphone as possible, whereas previously maybe they wanted to sit in the back. We have a great picture of a room that seats about 200, and if you look at it, the whole front of the room is empty and all the students are taking the back seats. And so I have some pretty outgoing people, and one of them just says, I can't tell you enough, you have to sit in all the seats made available to you in this room, not everybody in the back. There's a lot of microphones coming from the front as well as from the ceiling towards the rear. And it's a good relationship, but it's a lot of training and a lot of hand-holding.
Yeah. Well, I think in the end, and I think we can all attest just from what we've been hearing and seeing, your universities have pivoted quite a bit, and definitely utilizing technology a lot different than we all did a year, 3-5 years ago. And I think one of the questions that someone threw out there, I think it's a really great question, is what's that wish list? What's that wish list that you wish were in your classrooms that you think will be even more helpful? And it's a technology, maybe it's an ease of use. I'm not sure, but I kind of like to understand what do you think those wish lists would be, Tim? I mean, is there anything that you wish you had in your classrooms? And don't worry, we're not going to send it to the budget people for you.
Well, I think you should. The tracking camera equipment is certainly not pain-free. So I would love to see some improvements in that area going forward. And that's been a key. Tracking cameras are infamous, no matter the brand. They'll sometimes lose faculty. They'll lose an important part of the class. Simpler ways to let faculty maneuver through the multiple choices they have to make to share, not just in the classroom with the remote students. Are they going to use a webcam or the installed camera? Are they going to use a document camera? Are they going to play a disc, a DVD, a video disc, or a Blu-ray, which opens up another whole new set of challenges. Something that allows that to be a little simpler for them. Those would be important steps.
Okay. James, how about for you guys at the University of Indiana? Is there any things I'm sure there's a few things on your wish list.
Yeah, quite a few. Improved camera systems, like Tim said. You know, when we think about the hundreds of classrooms that we have, we need a way to scale those microphone systems that allow students that are in person to easily speak with remote students. You know, those need to be cost effective for scale. You know, I think also you know, we're thinking about the digital divide, and you know, not all of our students have weathered this very well. In many regards, technologically, it's something that, you know, we've seen that some students don't have the equipment that they need to participate in class. So that's high on my wish list, is that we have a base level of technology for our students and our faculty to be able to take advantage of the tools that we offer.
Okay. So Tina, you know, I'm going to ask you the big question. What are you hearing from the schools that we've been talking to in our great partnership with CCS? What are those wish list items that they're asking for?
Well, just like what's been said, it's technology that's easy to use and that the faculty and staff will pick up and use without hesitation. You know, I think the cameras in the classroom is a big one. It's additional displays, confidence monitors, things like that. And I think James brings up a very good point. You know, these Hyflex model of classrooms is not going to go away. It's going to evolve post-COVID. It's really about the student choice and being flexible in how they learn. And so, you know, for the students that want to be in person and allow for social distancing, and then we have students that want to join remotely, the engagement and participation is really dependent on the technology. But certainly, you know, the Sony hands-free classroom solution that I believe James mentioned, the Edge Analytics, our PTZ camera, our beamforming mic, these are technologies that, yes, schools have been thinking about or talking about implementing, but maybe they haven't yet. And COVID has just accelerated the need for this type of technology in the classroom to allow for a seamless transition into this more high-flex modality.
So Julie, you know, one of the things that I saw as a question, and it was actually a question I was going to ask a little bit about, is what are you seeing or hearing from schools around managed AV services? You know, the big buzzword before COVID, we kept hearing was AV as a service. Everywhere we kept hearing about was AV as a service. Is that starting to become a reality now? And are you seeing more and more of those requests coming out from schools?
Not as much here. We're hearing obviously about it and have looked into the ability to offer that to our customers. One of the big issues was about funding. You know, they wanted big integrations, but they couldn't afford them all at once. So we actually have a program that we call Tech Now, Pay Later, which is privately funded through us to split up payments over multiple years for equipment that we install immediately, and then they can pay it out over time. They don't have as much of an issue now with large integrations like that because of all this emergency funding. But we are seeing that shift to the ability to have a AV as a service, just the way that you would pay off your car or your cell phone. It doesn't look as scary a number if it's a monthly payment. So I think a lot of things are going to shift that way in the next couple of years.
A slight another question, Julie, and it's a perfect one for you. I'm kind of intrigued on this too. Is someone asked about, is the emergency fund only available for a university level, or can a department level apply for it? Is that more school specific, do you think, or is that really,
Yeah, it's
what are the
schools.
rules on?
So that we would be the whatever representatives from the university or the school district, charter school would be applying. So, and then that hopefully that money then trickles down to departments for their wish list of what they want to integrate into the rooms. They can't apply themselves, but they should certainly be sending information to all of the higher ups that are filling out the forms to make sure that they know that they're interested in getting in on some of that.
Okay. So James and Tim, we talked a little bit about how you're teaching the teachers how to teach. How are you teaching the students how to learn? So how are you showing this technology that's now coming to and we all know the students, I mean, it's more advanced when we all went to college. How are you helping them learn how to use the tools so that they can learn? Maybe Tim, I'll start with you on this.
Yeah, we most of that is class specific, so it's good to take a class and to get into that remotely and in person. And I think it's something I mentioned earlier. So we've been doing that, and we're hoping to add that to part of orientation when they come in the fall, and hopefully have a session on pick the right room and show them how the touchless technology works in the room, and what they'll sound like, and how they should speak and act. I mean, that's it. We don't have anything more formal than that in place. There's a lot more formal interactions with the faculty than the students at this point.
Okay. James, how about for you guys?
We're developing some additional digital literacy programs to help kind of bring up that basic level for students with some of these technologies. But like Tim said, a lot of times it's class by class as far as support goes. We've tried to provide knowledge-based entries and training, videos and other materials out there to help students as best we can. But I think a larger digital literacy program is going to help more students get up to that technological level where they need to be.
Okay. So Julie, as an integrator, you mentioned earlier you have on staff instructors. How are you utilizing them to help the universities? Now you talked a little bit on it. Are you helping just at the teaching level, or are you also maybe helping them build out plans for the students?
Yeah, we do both. We do train the trainer sessions that would be training the university staff on how to integrate this technology into the teaching, and then at the instructor level on how to use that technology effectively in the room. When we can get in the rooms, we'll certainly train with the equipment that has been installed. We've been doing an enormous amount of remote training ourselves to instructors all over the country right now, because it's a little bit easier here in Arizona, but a lot of schools are still closed. So we're doing as much training and as much of a comfort level that we can get to the instructors to, then they'll start to use it more, and then the whole experience will be a little bit more seamless.
Okay. So Jim or James, I'm sorry. One of the things I was kind of curious about is if you look at your AV systems that you're deploying now, and both you and Tim on this question, what's different than what you did a year ago? I know, James, you mentioned you were starting down some of this path, but have you had to make any pivots and changes, and especially like the last 6 to 9 months, that's just different than what you had originally planned?
Yeah, I think the biggest pivot for us is that the installed PC in the classroom is now the hub of technology. And, previously we had our typical cabinet, and, it had a DVD player in it, and then you had a document camera with HDMI that could display on the projector. And, we really don't want faculty to do that anymore because we can't easily capture that and share it in a web conference call. So that computer with the USB ports on it becomes the hub of everything that they do in the classroom. They use Zoom or Teams to connect with their students. So that document camera needs to be plugged in USB, or that whiteboard camera needs to be connected somehow through a USB converter, so it's available to remote students and it can be recorded. So I think that's really the biggest shift for us, is that the choice for faculty really has gone away, because they have to support the hybrid learning modality.
Yeah, and I'm sure as you went through and Tim did too, I'm assuming there was that big focus for the longest time at universities for BYOD, right? Having them bring their own laptops, and I've seen a lot of schools doing that. I'm assuming you've really shifted away from that and really more of a structured device in the classroom, and they need to follow utilizing that technology. Sound that correct, James?
Yeah, it works best with that installed PC in the classroom, right?
Yep.
Because we know that PC has the correct ports on it, it has the correct software on it, and we control that, and it's going to work. The downside of that installed PC is that it does not give the instructor the ability to prepare for class. So he or she can't have her PowerPoint open, before they walk into class, and have the videos queued up and ready to play, and have their special application up and ready to go. So there's this what we call time to teach is long with that installed PC. So we still would like to get to that point where BYOD, or really a bring your assigned device, may be a better term, works in the classroom. But technologically, we're just not quite there yet with USB-C and support for that. We've seen some technologies that are coming down the pike that help. We're trying some of those out, and I'm hopeful that we'll get there. That mobile device is going to be supportable in every classroom, so that you walk in, open it up, and maybe you don't even have to plug in. Maybe it's wireless, but it just works, and you can start teaching, and your students from halfway around the world are engaged.
So Tim, what kind of pivots have you had to make, in the last few months? I'm sure a lot of them.
Yeah, very similar to James. The PC is the center of everything. So there's an installed PC in every room. Obviously, that's the easiest way for faculty to teach. But we've also invested, and just to get into that computer, you have a digital interface now, so you can get as much of the room into the PC as possible. But we also went to USB switching, auto sensing, auto switching, and I'm sure James has tried this with his group, but that allows them to bring their laptops or their MacBooks and teach using them, because a number of faculty would rather do that. And those work. They work, but it took some practice. You end up throwing a lot of USB cables out that you thought were good, USB-C cables that maybe cost less. They do that for a reason, and you end up throwing some of them out. But heavily into allowing them to teach with the PC and with their own device. Wireless, different story, as James mentioned. Would like them. They can display wirelessly, but it's just not totally integrated into the Zoom environment right now.
Okay.
So I'd be on my wish list.
Well, I'm just kind of curious for any of you. What are you seeing, or how schools, or how you're doing it yourself, tracking analytics and usage, and really making sure that devices that you've deployed out there are being used? I don't know, James, Tim, or Julie, if you've seen any best cases or what you've done to do that. I'll throw to any of you if you want to answer on this one.
Yeah, I can talk about Indiana just a little bit. We've standardized on our classroom control systems, and that vendor has some analytics and reports that we can pull So we get some idea about when a particular device has been used in a classroom, right? So we know that the instructor has chosen to show the DVD player in a classroom, and you know, and some of those other choices that are out there. So we can start to build a picture about what's happening in the classroom. When we start to pair that with some analytics we have about the PC application usage that we have on our installed PCs, you know, that helps a lot too. So we know that, you know, they're running PowerPoint most of the time. They log into that PC, they fire up the Chrome browser first, and then they fire up PowerPoint, and that's pretty standard for our institution. So we have some idea what's happening, and you know, hope that information starts to become a little easier to extract. Right now, it takes a little bit of work, but it is extremely useful for us to make decisions on the technologies that go into our classrooms as we renovate.
Okay. Tim, anything that you're doing for analytics?
Almost identical. We get good reporting from the Dell machines. I'm sorry to name one brand, but I mean, I know that's pretty mainstream throughout universities. And we get reporting from our control systems as well. We're just not as strong on that yet as James' team may be.
Okay. Julie, any other best practices or things that you've seen out there that James or Tim haven't mentioned?
No, we certainly have a lot of manufacturers with a lot of tools for tracking analytics, from control systems to projector life to displays and what they're using on it at what time. It's all about the tech directors really reviewing that information and figuring out what they should do in the future with those rooms. Do they need to switch out equipment? Do they need to train the instructors better? We now have cameras that allow for occupancy tracking within spaces. So there's a lot of technology available. Now it comes down to who's reading that and what are they doing with it.
So we're just about out of time here. I do have a question. It looks like one question out here for Julie, and I can't get to know the answer, but someone was asking about whether CARES funding can be spread out over several years, kind of like a lease.
Well, the lease part of it is going to depend on the rules within your own organization, if they can cross over fiscal years with funding. Based on the CARES funding, absolutely. So for the education, the ESSER funds, first round does not expire until September 30th of 2022, and then it's each successive year. So CARES funds don't expire until September of 23, and American Rescue Plan doesn't expire until 24. On the higher ed side, you've got a year from the date of their approval of when they receive the funds. So they've got a year and then some 90 days of extension. So they've got quite a bit of time to be spending the funds. But on the lease side, that you're going to have to talk to your own organization about.
Well, cool. So as we're closing out, one of the questions I always like to ask everybody, and we started this on the first one last month, is outside of what you do all day long and the tech you get to play with, what's that technology that's kind of become your go-to during this COVID thing? I've heard everything from air fryers to their cell phone to digital cameras. So I'm kind of curious. You know, Tina, I'll start with you. What's that one tech gadget or thing that you've been using, or that's kind of been your go-to during COVID?
Great question. I don't know if it'd be considered a tech gadget, but at the start of the pandemic, I may have been hoarding carbohydrates. So with all good intention of doing a lot of juicing, I bought a fancy juicer that's probably still sitting in the box in the closet. So that would be what I purchased. I don't think it's been used very much. Bread is very good.
How about you, Tim?
I don't know. My bicycle is a pretty big device for me. But
Yeah.
beyond that, on the technical side, one thing I didn't think I'd be working with this much is GoPro cameras, and I think I'd have to say our fine arts department has led me into deploying GoPros and learning a lot more about them than I ever thought I would, because nobody can tell you how bad Zoom is or a webcam is faster than the fine arts department. So
Yeah.
we're putting out GoPro HD and 4K cameras and supporting them. And I don't know how big that's going to get for us, but it's out there now.
Well, we'll have to get you one of those Sony action cameras I hear all about to play around with.
We'll use it.
How about you? How about you, James?
Technologically speaking, probably microphones has been the big one for us, and for me in particular, in ensuring that we have good audio quality. That for myself in meetings and for others as well. Personally, I'm a motorcyclist, so you know, my motorcycle has been quite important this last year.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Julie, how about you?
Amazon Fire TV, I would say, was the savior of the pandemic, and every streaming service that you can think of.
Yeah.
Big winners in our house.
Oh yeah, I can imagine. Well, I want to thank Tim, James, Julie, Tina for you guys taking time out today and sharing a lot of great feedback. I think it was a great conversation. Those questions that we haven't answered, we'll make sure that we get information out there on there. Please keep them coming. As I mentioned earlier, we're doing this every month. Next month, we'll be doing something similar. It'll be around healthcare. So looking forward to having that conversation and keep having these conversations. So once again, to my panel, Julie, Tim, James, Tina, thank you again for taking some time out today.
Thank
Sure.
you.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Yeah, have a great day. Thanks, everybody.